I'm Julianna Forlano. You're watching Act TV. We all know the old adage, a picture tells 1,000 words. In our next guest case, his pictures have the power to launch 1,000 movements. Ted Rall's political cartoons have fueled the progressive movement for decades. He's here with us today to talk about his current work and what it says about the political moment we face. Ted, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome to be here. Thank you.
So, let's talk about comedy in the age of COVID. Have audiences changed? Is there still the same appetite for humor under the pandemic?
Well, people always ask me, is there a line that you can't cross in humor? And I say, no, there is not. In fact, when I was a kid, and I wish I could put my hands on this again, I came across a book of Holocaust humor from survivors at a garage sale. So, if you can,
If they can do it,
if they can do it, right, we can do it. And I think humor is a very important thing. Satire is a super important survival tactic in any time of crisis. And I'm finding that I think, like most cartoonists and commentators, that there's a lot more appetite than usual for what we do. I have not found it. It's not like after 9/11 when, for example, my editor at Time magazine called me and said, no one will ever want humor or cartoons again, and fired me and every other cartoonist who worked at Time. I remember just thinking, like, you're an idiot. And he was an idiot, but they did fire us. And I think it's not like that now at all. Now in the age of COVID, people, they need humor. They're stuck at home. They need content, and they want to sort of see the absurdity in what is obviously absurd on many, many levels. I mean, it's, basically watching an entire capitalist system laid low by a bug. It's amazing.
Your political cartoons are hard hitting, evocative. You've been thrown out of the LA Times, right? For,
Thing with the police.
Yeah. Can you talk about your work and the messages you're trying to convey in this moment?
Sure. Well, I mean, in general, what I'm trying to do is not state the obvious. So, for example, a lot of my left-leaning readers are very disappointed that I don't spend a lot of time bashing Donald Trump, because, frankly, there's a lot of really great cartoonists who do that, and that's taken care of. So, I try to draw attention to issues that are not being talked about much, and to when I'm dealing with issues that are, like the pandemic, I try to look at facets that other people might not have thought of. So, for example, one of the first COVID era cartoons I did was about how, hey, when we get back to usual, we'll be able to start invading other countries again and killing people with drones. Because I want to remind people that, like, some things that we used to do that were normal were very, very bad. And that we shouldn't go back to. And so we need to talk about those things now. And so I'm trying to kind of come at issues from a different point of view, make people think, make people question their own assumptions. I think that's what really any editorial cartoonist does who's worth his salt. Or
I love the way
I
comics.
would say his, but they're almost all men. But
Yes, I've noticed that. I've noticed also that comics can get points across that other journalistic media can't. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think other journalistic media could, and they're choosing not to. I feel like a lot of the time they are falling down on the job. They're sort of wallowing in fake objectivity, when in reality their biases are right there for everyone to see. And but so I think, we're just, the way that the news landscape is like, we've been appointed the court jesters. We're allowed to go places where mainstream sort of corporate people can't. And also, I think the kind of people who are drawn to this form of commentary are different in terms of personality. I mean, like, to get a job at the New York Times, you pretty much have to go to Columbia Journalism School. Columbia Journalism School doesn't offer any scholarships or financial aid. So only rich kids go to Columbia Journalism School, which means only rich kids end up working at the New York Times, which sort of makes them a
Thank you
certain
very much for explaining that to me. I did not know that. I
Yeah,
just thought
it's
somehow
growth.
it was, that I guess only the wealthy are. Well, that explains a lot about the whole New York Times and why. Why can't we get even one guy in there who is, or lady who is,
Right, progressive.
radical? But there's no radicals at the New York Times. I
No,
went
there
to
are
dinner
not.
with a bunch of people who work at the New York Times because my husband is a scientist and one of them is married to a scientist. So I got as a radical invited to this New York Times dinner, and they, I just went there as a, I was hosting the show on Pacifica at the time, so I was kind of a hot lightning rod of ideas that were almost. We didn't get invited back. Let me just say, we did not get invited back to the next journalism conference.
I'm used to that feeling.
I don't know, but I just, you'd think as journalists, and even coming from different angles, there would be this idea of what journalism is. But the folks that I met who were at the Times, hopefully they're not watching because I think we are still friends on Facebook. It was exactly what you were saying. So do you do you still have your cartoons in outlets who would never say anything, as sort of pointed as you are able to say in your cartoons, or have you noticed that traditional journalism has started to edge out really more radical comic editorial comic writers?
Almost none. Most news. I mean, certainly, like my columns appear in the Wall Street Journal, which is about as conservative of an editorial space as there is. But I think what's interesting about that is that when you're left of the Democratic Party, there's more space for you in non-democratic outlets because, in a way, you're attacking the Democrats, and right-leaning outlets don't really care if, as long as you're beating up the Democrats from some point of view. But there's really no space for left of Democratic Party politics, especially in cartooning anymore. That's changed. I mean, I used to be in 140 papers. Obviously, a lot of it is the fact that there just aren't as many papers, and the papers that are left have shrunk, and they're not. And one of the first things to go was cartooning. I mean, there's a lot of, but I think there's a lot of contributing factors to a very perfect storm. When I got into cartooning, I joined an association of editorial cartoonists, which had about 700 members. Now we're down to about, I think, 22 full-time members. So it's, cartooning is definitely, radical cartooning is only online now, really.
And the funny times, which I love. If you
Funny
want,
times, it persists.
it persists. It's the best. If you don't know it, get it. It's amazing. It's hilarious, and
it's print. You can only do it in print, I think. I don't know if there's.
yeah, it supports the post office. We just had a guy on from the Postal Workers Union, so they're going to give it to you in your mailbox. It's great.
It's a good thing. It's very simple. It's very old-fashioned layout, but they just have good taste.
So before the Democratic primary, you had a book published called Bernie, and then you recently released an updated version of that book. What changed?
Good timing.
Right.
I'm raking in the bucks.
Yeah. Oh, it's too bad. But you took a chance. What changes did the 2020 primary bring to your portrayal of Sanders?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, so the original book came out in 2015, and that actually was a New York Times bestseller because I had the only book about Bernie at all, really, in any format at that time. And so I updated it to include, the way he was treated in 2016, and the way he tried to address the mistakes that he made, and how he really kind of embedded himself far more into the Democratic Party since the defeat in 2016, and they took it from him, really. And then so he's still the same guy, but he tried to cozy up more to the DNC and to the powers that be. And I have to admit, even I was surprised, not so much that he withdrew from the campaign, but I was surprised by the Biden endorsement. I was displeased. I think that was a poor move tactically as well as ideologically. And
Why?
Well, I mean, first of
I,
all, I
I
mean,
always think that he's just afraid we're going to get another Trump, and Trump is so close to fascism that Bernie would pretty much do anything to stop that from happening, even endorsing, a neoconservative.
well, I would say what's the rush, right? I mean, the convention, the whatever it is that they're going to do that passes for a convention is going to be in it's not for another few months. And normally you wouldn't endorse your rival candidate in a situation when you're a close runner up until the convention or at the convention or just afterwards. And there's really no campaigning to speak of going on really on either side. So I just think, frankly, to be crass, I mean, Joe Biden's super old. He could just drop dead any second, and like if he did, or he could just become indisposed, and he's already obviously not in the best shape mentally.
Yeah.
And so you got
Oh
so I
my
mean,
God, this is a disaster. Okay.
it's a disaster. So like you could just see, Bernie, I think would be well advised to have just officially remained a candidate because look, let's just say Biden dies like tomorrow. Okay, well
We
then
got nobody.
the corporate Democrats are going to say, well, Bernie dropped out. He's not the number two. He's not the heir apparent, which he would have been if he hadn't dropped out. They would say it's now wide open and it's for anyone that we decide to install. So it was just a dumb move.
Uh, it's interesting how they all dropped out. All the candidates dropped out before the one state primary, and now Bernie's out fast and early. It's questionable what went on. How many
Yeah.
phone calls are going around that we're not hearing about? But Bernie looks a lot more relaxed ever since he dropped out. I have to say, he lost like 15 years.
Yeah, my publisher thinks that he just was tired, and after the heart attack, he just kind of like just couldn't. He's just like, I just can't. And I think after the Super Tuesday debacle and the James Clyburn nonsense and all that stuff, it just sort of was like, forget it. This is my second time. I'm done, and he just walked away. I don't know. Maybe that could be it.
I was a Bernie person from the beginning, and there's something that I'd be interested in your thoughts about, going back to a previous conversation that we just had, about people who are on the left, who are farther left than, say, the Democrats. It seems to me that sometimes we are providing a service to Republicans to then beat the party that's a little closer to what we would want. How do we deal with that? I mean, I had Katie Halper on our program. She's the one who interviewed the woman who is saying that, and she's a personal friend of mine. So saying that, we've had people like Lee Camp on the show. He does a lot of serious criticism of the Democratic Party. And I'm always like, this is a bad idea, because I fear that the masses and hordes will be swayed and then they won't vote for Biden. So, which I feel is a good idea if we don't want all out fascism in this country. I could be wrong on any of those fronts. What are your thoughts about this area?
Well, I'm just going to, yes. I mean, I come at this from a different point of view. I think that progressives, leftists do not owe the Democratic Party their votes at all. That they need to be earned. But just to your point, look, this is an inherent feature of a primary process, regardless of who comes out of it. So unless you have, like in 2012, Obama coming out unopposed, this is going to be the case. I mean, it would have been exactly the same situation if Bernie had emerged as the front runner, and then Joe Biden and the 19 others would have beaten up Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders emerges with, for example, Biden's criticisms of Bernie being a democratic socialist, and those are used in Republican attack ads. So it works no matter who wins. I mean, the only way to avoid that is just to not have contested primaries. There's just no getting around that. But I think there's an advantage to contested primaries, not to a two-party system, but to contested primaries. I mean, you do end up with a candidate who is more battle-tested, more ready to take the rough and tumble of a general election campaign. And let's face it, I mean, Donald Trump is not going to go easy. He's not going to play by Queensberry rules, right? So he's mean as hell. So,
And we put a corpse up against this guy. Maybe that's good because the corpse won't feel the attacks. I don't know. It just.
I think we chose the worst possible. I mean, literally, I'm like, oh, Andrew Yang would have been a lot better.
Any of them
would have been a lot better.
Marianne Williamson would have been better.
Marianne Williamson. Right now, the spiritual thing is looking real good.
Yeah, I just played a clip. She was saying about striking debt.
Yeah, no, she's. I mean, I think that's right. I think they literally, Cory Booker. I would be much more excited about.
Anybody.
He's excellent.
Anybody with a pulse. Somebody with a pulse.
No, I mean, Joe. I mean, seriously, we're really going into a gunfight here with like a very dull knife. I mean, it is. I mean, I have a hard time seeing how Biden wins. I really do.
Well, that's very depressing. So it's good that you're out there saying that you'll find it's going to be hard for Biden to win, because it's good for your business as a cartoonist, because then we need more, cartoon relief.
You can cartoonists never have a problem. As politicians always lie, they always steal, they always disappoint you. And it's like I had when Obama was elected, people asked me, and they asked a bunch of cartoonists, how could you ever do your job under Barack Obama? I'm like, he's a politician. He will lie. He will disappoint. And he did. So, you can always count on that. Take it to the bank.
I actually find it harder to do humor under Trump because what he's doing is so egregious and like life-threatening. It's kind of like, I just watched it. They played Titanic on CBS, and it's one of those movies that every time it's on, I somehow get sucked into watching 8 hours of Titanic with commercials. So, and at the end where they're playing their instruments, the band is like, well, I guess the ship's going down. We're going to continue to play our instruments. But at some point, they all do leave and run for their lives. I feel like with Trump, it's hard to do humor because we're running for our lives. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever get kind of overwhelmed with the horribleness?
It's funny. I guess I don't, because for me, I made my peace with the fact that Trump would be president for 8 years back in the summer of 2016 when Hillary Clinton became the nominee.
No.
And so I kind of accepted it. But I don't. I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's kind of like I have books, another World War II reference. I have books of World War II era political cartoons from like, leftist German cartoonists and stuff. They're not very funny because there's so much at stake that the passion is really strong, but they're not, you can't, things have to be a little bit light. For me, the problem is that good cartooning, good satire is about taking a situation that's a little strange and then saying, what if it got like a lot weirder, and you pushed it to the nth degree? But Trump is at the nth degree. People say, well, he said this outrageous thing the other day. What are you going to draw a cartoon about? I'm like, it is a cartoon. You can't exaggerate from, he's already at 11. What are you going to do? It's like, but Obama was a much more fun president to satirize because it wasn't obvious, Donald Trump is like self-parody, and he knows it, and he works it. He's actually, I think, a very gifted politician.
I thought that's very disappointing, actually. You think that, did you just say that Trump was a gifted politician?
Yeah, his instincts are uncanny. I mean, look, there's going to be books written about how he reinvented campaigning. Like, for example, Hillary Clinton spent $7 billion on her campaign. Donald Trump spent $2 million on his campaign. He ran out of a closet in Trump Tower. She spent $1 million on a stage for one event. Literally, he went to like elementary schools in like Allentown, Pennsylvania. He would say
one racist thing, and then he'd be on Fox, or he'd be on MSNBC forever, and then on Fox forever because of what he was.
That's not a bug. That's a feature. And the thing is, like, I talked to a guy from CNN who was explaining why they gave him so much coverage, and it was like, well, we never knew what he was going to say. Hillary Clinton kept giving the same stump speech time after time after time. It's like, well, stump speeches are from when, there was no communication between places that were connected by train. It's like, we're doing this by Zoom. Okay. If Hillary Clinton, if Joe Biden gives a speech in like, Piscataway, New Jersey today, it's this, he can't give the same speech in Anchorage, Alaska tomorrow. It's like, it's got to be different. Like, oh, Trump plays freeform jazz. It's like chaos.
Figure this out, Ted. I mean, does no one read who is, does no one know anything about history and why they were doing that? How did they not figure out, even if Hillary kept the same platforms, but in Iowa, she discussed corn futures, and in New York, she discussed policing. Right. Although I don't know if that would have gone her way anyway. But what, why didn't they fit? Why
they don't bring people in from outside? They don't consult. I mean, like, I have worked for political campaigns. I worked for Dukakis, Mondale, and McGovern's run in 1980, and it's like they don't. It's just it's self-referential. They don't bring in historians. They don't bring people in who know what they're talking about.
I have always said that every politician, political campaign needs a comedian on the staff, so that they don't step into some joke that they don't understand that they're stepping into. I think I started saying this under Bush.
Yeah, that's like, it's like tech companies hire hackers to try to break into their websites, right? To like stress test their own their companies, right? A campaign should have outsiders, people who are like enemies, like Republicans or like lefties like me, who are going to come in and just be like, listen, if you say this, this is what like I'm going to say tomorrow.
Ted Rall, it's a joy to have you on this show. I have to say, I interview a lot of different types of people, and I have different types of favorite, but whenever there's a comedian who's lefty, this is like my favorite. My favorite. Much. We're speaking with Ted Rall. He is a political comedian. Where do you send people to find your work, since it's all over the place when someone
just go to my website. It's just rall.com, RALL.
And you are working with one of our favorites here on this show, Greg Palast, again. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very exciting. We have Greg has a new book out called, I hate to say this, How Trump Stole 2000.
We saw it, yeah.
And it's all about just basically, what's cool about it is it's a great book. Greg lays out all the ways that elections are stolen these days, and I have a comic book that's inside it, as it's sort of embedded inside the book, but it's sort of not redundant to it. And it's sort of like, if you've ever wondered about things like caging, or these, like, you hear about like these all the forms of voter fraud, the way that voters are disenfranchised, it sort of explains that in sort of an easy.
Oh, that's terrific! I'm thrilled. I look forward to it. I love the Billionaires Ballot Bandits and the other one that's out there, who's I'm forgetting right now.
Well, he did lots of books, like Best Democracy Money Can Buy.
How did you guys start working together? Just out of curiosity. And I do want to just quickly say thanks for the raid, Touring News, and welcome to all the new viewers. We just got a landslide of new viewers in our Twitch chat in the middle of this. So they're all marching in here to see it, Ted.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I did tweet it out. There's a, so I've always wanted to work with Greg. I mean, I admired him tremendously. So it's like kind of a dream to know him at all, and much less be able to work with him. I mean, really.
He's awesome. Amazing.
But he just, he reached out on this project years ago called Steal This Vote.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so, he liked my cartoons, and that's how we started talking. And I was totally like, such a fanboy. I was like, oh my God, Greg Palast, you're so awesome. And then he was really we got closer because he's in LA, and I was in LA dealing with the crappy LA Times lawsuit. And he really helped me and came through. It was a bad time. I mean, it's still a bad time, but we're still working on it.
Well, I wish you luck on that. And I'm looking forward to seeing the new project with Greg. He was on a couple weeks ago to talk with us about it. And then hopefully we'll have him on again soon if we can stomach the bad news that Trump is probably going to win. I just don't want it to stop our fight. We have to keep fighting for progressive values regardless of who is in office. So that's where we're at.
No doubt. Always. Look, I think in that sense, I think often when Democrats are in office, the left goes to die. I mean, with Obama, there was.
I was thinking that same thing.
Not much though. And and Obama crushed Occupy. Let's not forget that. And although it's a story that's been censored, And it's
Actually, Act TV came out of Occupy, so we are not censoring it, but
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But but for the most part, people don't know about the coordinated raids and stuff. And so, I think, in a sense, people are awake under, I'm not saying that you should vote Republican in order to reinvigorate the left, but,
No, I think Biden can reinvigorate the left. I think the left, if Bernie Sanders, my thoughts are if Bernie Sanders did anything, he helped reinvigorate the left and just give a voice out there. Now we have other candidates, and it's not like Bernie's still a senator, and Bernie is kind of a torchbearer, and he's hopefully going to be around, and people are going to look
pretty old too, though.
Opinion.
I mean, I think, look, honestly, I think the COVID-19 economic crisis is going to reinvigorate the left, regardless of who the president is after November, because what we have here is massive unemployment, and we have a system that is not responsive. I mean, as we're speaking here, the Senate is on recess. They literally think they're acting like everything's chill. It's like, look,
how did they get time off?
How down the toilet.
That's just crazy.
They're not. They're not. They didn't do enough economic stimulus. They really needed to do like $2,000 per person per week, like Bernie wanted. That's the way to go, and they're not doing it, and it's not going to be enough. And we're having. I mean, I feel like as a Marxist, this is a traditional Marxist oversupply. Crisis of oversupply, underconsumption, and we're just going to see the whole thing fall apart. And it's not going to be acceptable to throw tens of millions of people out of their homes through no fault of their own. And that's what's going to happen unless Congress wakes up. I don't think they're going to wake up. I don't think Biden gets it. I don't think Trump gets it. They get it a little bit, but they don't get it. This is not a recession. This is it's already a depression, and it could be arrested, but it would have to be arrested quickly and, as Trump would say, bigly.
Bigly, exactly. I bought gas for $1.89 in New Jersey.
$1.19 in Ohio.
What? I should have driven to Ohio. Would have been worth the extra gas. Not for the environment. Okay. Final thoughts, Ted? I mean, this has been a great conversation. Where are you? Are you in California? What part of the
world? I'm in New York.
Oh, that's great. Maybe we can have coffee sometime.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll have to have mask coffee.
Mask, 6 feet away coffee.
6 feet away, the straw like under the mask or something.
Yeah, I'm waiting for someone to design the mask with the flap so you can stick the straw in there.
I was actually thinking of selling like custom Ted Rall masks.
Do it.
I'm gonna look into it. I need to figure out what to put on them. But it can't just be like cartoons. It's got to be something clever.
I'm sure you'll come up with 10 different things.
Yeah, probably.
I was at the Jersey Shore, and they are this week because I did that, and
nice.
They are selling masks of all different kinds. Like it's got a seashell on it, and it's like it's.
Were the beaches open?
It matches your shirt.
Were the beaches open?
You had to they were open. They weren't open for swimming, but it was 60 degrees, and the water was like freezing. There was ice cubes in it.
You wouldn't go anyway.
No, I was just going to let my daughter basically play in an enormous sandbox instead of just being in the apartment all day. So, and nobody was there. It was great. I have to say, the beach when it's cold is perfect.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah. So, but there you had to buy a ticket, and they were kind of, letting not as many people on. And now you have to pay to go on, which I think is ridiculous. It's like, it's Earth. And
if you're the governor of New Jersey, can't you just close it down and sit there like a walrus with your family all by yourself?
Oh, it's a good idea. I think that's what's that guy's name?
Remember that when Chris Christie did that?
Chris Christie? Yeah.
It was like, and he was like, "What?" I mean, that's to me the press doing a good job. Like the reporter from the Bergen Record, like hired a little plane and got the zoom lens and then got that amazing photo. And I was always like, Chris, you should have been more alert. That plane, it wasn't just, selling like suntan lotion.
Oh man, that guy was a joke.
Although he's actually a pretty good commentator now on ABC. He's pretty smart. I'm like, well, he was a terrible governor, but like as a political analyst, he's pretty smart.
Corrupt and horrid, but better than Trump. So,
True.
Ted, this has been a joy. As I said, we're speaking with Ted Rall. Go online and find his cartoons and his columns at rall.com, Rall. Thanks a lot, Ted. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.